Imagine a future where new buildings no longer contribute to climate change. Sounds like a dream, right? Well, New York is making it a reality, becoming the first state in the U.S. to mandate the complete electrification of all new constructions. While many states talk about going green, New York is the first to put its money where its mouth is. But here's where it gets controversial. California, a state often seen as a leader in renewable energy, has surprisingly pumped the brakes on updating its building codes for electrification. What's going on? This groundbreaking decision in New York, finalized in July by the New York State Fire Prevention and Building Code Council, means that starting in 2026, new buildings will be prohibited from using fossil fuels like gas. Think about that. No more gas stoves, furnaces, or water heaters in new homes and businesses. According to Democratic Representative Emily Gallagher, buildings account for 40% of our state emissions, so by cutting them out, we're taking an incredible step forward for our environmental goals. She even admitted this was a real battle to get passed, hinting at the intense opposition this measure faced. The new code initially targets single-family homes, commercial and industrial buildings under 100,000 square feet, and residential buildings with 7 stories or fewer starting next year. By 2029, the mandate will extend to almost all new buildings. And this is the part most people miss. There will be a few exceptions, such as laboratories, crematoriums, restaurants, and very large buildings, where the existing power grid can't handle the increased electricity demand. This statewide rollout builds upon existing rules already in place in New York City. So, what does this mean in practice? Expect to see a surge in the installation of heat pumps and heat pump water heaters across the state. These efficient electric alternatives will become the norm and hopefully encourage homeowners in older buildings to make the switch as well. Environmental groups are understandably thrilled, hailing this as a major victory for decarbonization. They also emphasize the fierce resistance from the fossil fuel industry, which lobbied hard to block the new code. Researchers point out that this move will dramatically improve air quality by reducing harmful pollutants like carbon monoxide, particulate matter, benzene, and nitrogen oxides. These pollutants are known to cause respiratory and cardiovascular problems. In fact, studies suggest that in 2017, fossil fuel use in New York buildings resulted in a staggering $21.7 billion in health-related costs and nearly 2,000 premature deaths, the highest figure in the nation. But hold on, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Several business groups, the fossil fuel industry, and building developers are strongly opposed. They argue that the new code will drive up construction costs and cause project delays. And here's a point that sparks differing opinions. They also worry that these higher costs will be passed on to consumers, potentially pricing families out of the housing market. Mike Fazio, Executive Vice President of the New York State Builders Association, argues that a one-size-fits-all electrification mandate ignores the diversity of New York's housing markets, climate zones, and infrastructure capacity, and working families will pay the price. These opponents are not giving up easily. Several organizations even sent a letter to the U.S. Attorney General, urging the Department of Justice to block the code from taking effect. While initial construction costs might increase, a New York State Energy Research and Development Authority report suggests that consumers will actually save money on their energy bills in the long run. The report estimates a payback period of a decade or less, with households potentially saving an average of $5,000 over 3 decades due to a 17% reduction in energy use. Some even argue that initial costs might not be higher at all, as developers will save money by not installing costly fossil fuel infrastructure. Now let's swing back to California. In June, Governor Gavin Newsom signed a bill aimed at easing housing development to address the state's housing crisis. However, this law also puts a 6-year freeze on updates to state and local building codes. California typically revises its building codes every 3 years, using these updates to incorporate stricter decarbonization measures. Lawmakers are concerned that skipping the 2028 residential code update could hinder the introduction of more ambitious emission standards. This raises the question, is California prioritizing affordable housing over aggressive climate action? New York's bold move comes at a time when the U.S. is slowing down its green transition at the federal level. The previous administration focused on boosting domestic fossil fuel production and hindering renewable energy progress, cutting funding from green energy projects and climate research. Despite the federal headwinds, New York's ambitious electrification plan is expected to serve as a model for other states. The widespread adoption of cleaner power and heating technologies will support the growth of the U.S. green technology industry and could drive down prices as demand increases. So, what do you think? Is New York's electrification mandate a bold step towards a sustainable future? Or will it create unintended economic consequences? And what about California's decision to prioritize housing development over stricter building codes? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.